you ever noticed how conspiracy theorists love to say, hey man, I'm just asking questions? Or they might say, do your own research. There's a lot of this going on right now all over social media. And because many young people haven't been trained to think critically, well, they're falling for the silliest, most outrageous lies. In this video, we're going to break down why this technique is so effective, how to spot it, and why genuine questioning looks completely different. The just asking questions technique, sometimes called JAQing, it works like this. Instead of making direct claims that can be fact-checked or debated, the person phrases everything as seemingly innocent questions. For example, instead of saying the moon landing was faked, they might say, hey, why don't we see stars in the moon landing photos? Or, isn't it suspicious that the flag appears to be waving? How could they survive the radiation belts? Do you notice what happened? They planted doubt without making any claims that they have to defend. They're just asking questions. This technique is brilliant in the manipulative way for several reasons. First of all, there's plausible deniability. You see, when they're challenged, they can retreat to, hey man, I'm just asking questions. What's wrong with asking questions? This makes critics look like they're against inquiry itself. Second is the burden of proof reversal. In honest debate, the person making a claim has to prove it. But while JAQing, the questioner forces others to do the work of debunking while they just keep asking new questions. It's exhausting to play defense against an endless stream of, but what abouts? Third, it exploits gaps in knowledge. Nobody knows everything. There are always gaps. Honest scholars will say, I don't know, or that's a good question. Let me research it. But JAQers interpret any gap as proof of a conspiracy. Why can't you explain this? See? Ooh, that's suspicious. Fourth, it sounds like healthy skepticism. Yeah, we're taught to question things, to think critically, not blindly accept authority. The JAQer hijacks this virtue, making their conspiracy mongering look like independent thinking. Listen, this isn't new. Let's look at some historical examples. There's the lost cause narrative after the Civil War. Southern revisionists would ask, wasn't the war really about states' rights? Weren't many enslaved people actually happy? Didn't black soldiers fight for the Confederacy? You see, these questions repeated endlessly helped rewrite history for decades, despite overwhelming evidence that the Confederacy explicitly fought to preserve slavery. And then there's Holocaust denial. Holocaust deniers rarely say outright, hey, it didn't happen. Instead, they ask, why are there no German documents ordering extermination? Hello, there are lots of them. They would say, how could the crematoriums handle so many bodies? Well, engineering analysis showed that they could, and they in fact did. They will say, why do survivors' testimonies differ? Well, because trauma affects memory, and hundreds of thousands of testimonies exist that corroborate the core facts of the Holocaust. Now, here's something fascinating. This technique might be the oldest trick in the book, literally. In Genesis chapter 3, when the serpent wants to deceive Eve, he doesn't start with a direct lie. He starts with a question.
Has God indeed said, you shall not eat of every tree of the garden?
Do you notice what he's doing? God had clearly said that they could eat from every tree except one. The serpent reframes it to sound like God was being restrictive about all the trees. He's not making a claim, he's just asking a question. Now, the question itself contains a distortion that makes God look unreasonable. It forces Eve to defend what was already perfectly clear. Did God really say that? That becomes the template for every conspiracy that follows. Once doubt is planted through the question, the serpent moves to direct lies. You won't die, he says. God's just keeping you from being like him. But he couldn't start there. No, he had to soften the ground with doubt first. Jesus later calls Satan the father of lies. This Genesis account shows his method. He uses questions that contain lies to undermine trust in clear truth. So, When modern conspiracy theorists say, hey man, I'm just asking questions, they're knowingly or not using the oldest deceptive technique in human history. Now, adding the Genesis connection shows that this is a spiritual issue. It's not just a media literacy issue. The pattern of deception is ancient and has spiritual dimensions. And it gives us a biblical framework for recognizing manipulation. It connects ancient wisdom to modern problems and shows that Scripture is always relevant. It helps explain why this technique is so psychologically powerful. It exploits the same vulnerability that Satan exploited, our tendency to doubt clear communication when alternative interpretations sound appealing. The serpent did eventually make some direct claims, but as the opening move in a deceptive strategy, questioning clear communication to plant doubt, it's exactly the same technique. So, how do you tell genuine questioning from JAQing? Here are some telltale signs. With genuine questions, the asker actually wants answers and will accept good evidence. They'll engage with expert responses. They admit when satisfied or when they lack expertise. They're willing to change their mind, and they ask follow-up questions that build understanding. But when someone is just JAQing, no answer is good enough. There's always another question. Expert consensus, that's just dismissed as, oh, they're in on it. The questions imply a predetermined conclusion. The person shows no interest in actually learning. When one question is answered, they immediately pivot to another. They will often conflate, I don't understand this, with this can't be true. Now, here's a key test. Does the person treat uncertainty as genuinely interesting or as proof of a conspiracy? As a Christian, I think about how Jesus engaged with questions. The Pharisees often asked him trap questions, not to learn, but to catch him. They might say, is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar? Or who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Jesus saw through all that. But notice that he also welcomed genuine seekers. Nicodemus came with real questions. The disciples constantly asked for clarification. Thomas, he wanted evidence of the resurrection. The difference is this. Genuine seekers want truth. JAQers, they want to avoid being proven wrong while undermining truth itself. Proverbs 18, verse 17 says this, the one who states his case first seems right until the other comes and examines him. That's why we need to actually examine claims, not just raise questions and then walk away. When you encounter JAQing yourself, number one, name the pattern. Say something like, hey, I noticed that you're asking many questions, but not engaging with the answers. What evidence would actually satisfy you? Two, flip it. Say, hey, those are interesting questions. What research have you done? What do experts in this field say? Third, ask about their standard of evidence. What would it take to convince you otherwise? If nothing would, then you're not really asking questions, are you? Fourth, don't play endless defense. You're not obliged to answer 47 rapid-fired questions from someone who won't accept any answer. Fifth, point to comprehensive resources. These questions, you could say, have been thoroughly addressed. Here's a detailed resource. Have you read it? Hey, asking questions is good. Skepticism can be healthy. Science advances through questioning. Faith deepens through wrestling with hard questions. But there's a world of difference between honest inquiry and using questions as a shield for spreading misinformation. A lot of that going on right now. Genuine questions seek answers. JAQing just seeks to avoid accountability while poisoning the well. So next time someone says, hey man, I'm just asking questions, pay attention to whether they're actually listening to the answers. That'll tell you everything that you need to know.